The first step. The sun had barely touched the hills when Leela opened her window and watched the runners pass by. Every morning was the same, a steady rhythm of feet against the earth, a pulse that seemed to beat in time with her own longing. They looked so free, so certain, and she wasn't. Leela worked in a small bakery in the heart of her mountain town. Every dawn, she kneaded dough until her arms ached, breathing in the scent of warm bread and sugar. She liked her job, the routine, the rhythm, but sometimes, as she dusted flour from her hands, she'd look out the window and wonder, what would it feel like to run toward something instead of around it? Years ago, she had promised herself she'd run a marathon. She had seen one on TV and thought, one day that will be me. But one day had turned into maybe next year, and then into probably never. Each time she thought about starting, the fear of failure stopped her. She remembered the piano lessons she quit, the half-written book she abandoned, the painting supplies still sealed in their box. Starting is easy, she used to tell herself. Finishing is the hard part. And so, she never started. One Sunday morning, Leela's grandfather came to visit. He was an old carpenter, his hands calloused from decades of work. As they sat on the porch, he sipped his tea slowly and looked at her with kind, sharp eyes. "You've got a restless look, Leela, like someone standing in the doorway of their own life." She tried to laugh it off. "I just wish I was one of those people who could actually finish what they start." He chuckled. "When I built this house," he said, pointing to the walls around them, "I didn't even know how to use a saw right. First day, I cut the boards wrong. Second day, I dropped the hammer on my foot. Third day, I wanted to give up." "So what made you keep going?" she asked. "I told myself, if I start, I'll finish." It wasn't pride, it was a promise. Those words settled into her chest like a seed. That night, she lay awake, hearing them again and again. "If I start, I will finish." The next morning, she found her old sneakers in the closet. The soles were worn, the laces frayed. She didn't have fancy gear, or a plan, or even much confidence. But she had a start. She stepped outside. The air was cold and sharp. Her heart pounded faster than her feet. The first 100 meters felt like a mountain. Her lungs screamed, her legs trembled. Everything in her said, "Turn back, you can't do this." But then, through the noise, a quieter voice whispered, "You started, just finish today's run." She made it to the end of the street, barely a kilometer, and collapsed on the curb, laughing and gasping for breath. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had done yesterday. And tomorrow, she promised, she'd go a little further. Days turned into weeks. She ran through drizzle, through dawn, through the ache in her knees. She made mistakes, started too fast, skipped warm-ups, tripped over her own shoelaces, but she didn't stop. Each time she wanted to quit, she remembered her grandfather's voice and the promise she'd made herself. Some days she felt strong, like the world couldn't catch her. Other days she dragged her feet, fighting tears, whispering, "Just one more step." And with every start, every imperfect, messy, painful start, she finished. 6 months later, the marathon arrived. Leela stood at the starting line, surrounded by thousands of strangers, all hearts pounding with the same dream. She wasn't the fastest, the fittest, or the youngest, but she was there. She had started. The first 10 kilometers passed like a blur. The crowd's cheers carried her forward. By 20 kilometers, her legs felt heavy, her breaths short. By 30, pain surged through her hips and ankles, screaming louder than the noise around her. A part of her wanted to stop, the same part that had stopped her from starting years ago. But she closed her eyes and saw her grandfather's hands, rough, steady, building something that lasted. And she whispered, "If I start, I will finish." Step by step, she moved forward. When her body wanted to quit, her promise carried her through. She didn't need speed. She didn't need perfection. She only needed persistence. When she crossed a finish line, she didn't cry or cheer. She just stood there, trembling, breathless, and smiled. Because she knew now that the hardest part had never been the miles. It was the first step, and she had taken it. Every great finish begins with a single, uncertain start. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be ready. You just need to begin. Because once you start, you've already chosen to finish.